China has suspended the export of certain critical minerals to the United States in response to Donald Trump's trade war. Among them are so-called rare earths. Now, these are heavy metals found in the Earth's crust, and they're vital components in a range of modern gadgets. But chances are the last time you heard about them was in high school. So let's do a quick science class refresher and look at a few of these minerals and their uses. We'll start with praseodymium, neodymium and dysprosium. These are rare earths with strong magnetic properties. They're crucial in wind turbine generators and in traction motors of electric vehicles. Next, we have lanthanum and cerium. These rare earths are used in rechargeable batteries and they're key to battery performance. In the last decade, they've played a significant role in improving the lifespan of the batteries in our devices. Finally, we have yttrium, europium and terbium. These are rare earths with the unique ability to emit light in specific colours. Now, that's useful for energy-efficient lighting and TVs and other screens like this giant one I'm standing in front of. So with China blocking exports of those rare earths, what can the United States do? Well, as we just heard, Ukraine is an option. Kyiv and Washington are a step closer to signing a deal for the US to develop Ukraine's critical minerals in exchange for security guarantees. But is there a better way? I spoke to Elisabeth Braw. She's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Centre for Strategy and Security. She's just written an article for Foreign Policy magazine entitled "America Should Recycle Its Own Rare Earths, Not Grab Ukraine's. Green Measures at Home Beat Bullying Abroad." I started by asking her why rare earths are so important.
Rare earths, I think, are mostly unknown to us ordinary citizens, but they are in single electronic gadgets we use, which is why they are so important. And they exist in lots of places, in lots of countries, but they only exist in very small quantities, which is why they are called rare earths. They are essentially spread throughout the rock in whatever country they are in. And at the moment, Western countries get a lot, in fact, most of their rare earths from China, where they are processed after coming from elsewhere. And America is trying to change that, which is why we've been hearing a lot about America's proposed rare earth deal with Ukraine.
And we need them because what? Because they're going to be very important as we move into green technology and battery-powered technology. And they're an important aspect of that.
They are already incredibly important and stand to become even more important as we move into a greener economy with greener technology. They are in every electronic gadget, and they are also crucially in EV batteries. So if we're going to focus on or start driving more EVs, we need a lot more of these rare earths, because there are more rare earths in a car battery, unsurprisingly, than there are in a mobile phone. So we'll need even more rare earths than what we have today. And the big question is where they're going to come from.
OK, and two big issues with that. One, as you say, where they're coming from, and two, where they're processed. And as I understand it, China has pretty much cornered the world market in processing of these things.
China has indeed cornered the market in rare earth processing, and that is because we in the West consider rare earth processing dirty. It is dirty. Nobody wants it in their backyard. So we, as a result of globalization, outsource that to China. Today, almost all rare earth processing is conducted in China. And on top of that, Chinese companies have cornered the market in getting them out of the ground in the places where it's mined, and that is in a number of African countries, and indeed also a bit in China itself. But the bottom line is that we don't have access to a lot of this production, as it were, of rare earths.
OK, so this was all fine, sort of, until we suddenly enter this new world of tit-for-tat tariffs. So let's draw a line between what's happening now and what used to happen. Up to this point, had China used its dominant position, or had it been a sort of benevolent monopolizer?
It has been a benevolent monopolizer, if I want to use that phrase, because it was beneficial to China to be the world supplier of or provider of rare earths. It worked for everybody. At various times, it has threatened to withhold exports of rare earths or certain rare earths. For example, when a few years ago, when it got cross with Japan, it threatened to withhold rare earths to Japan. And I should add that it's not just consumer gadgets that require rare earths, it's also military equipment. So it's not just an inconvenience if you don't get the rare earths. It is quite significant. It would be quite a significant disruption of your country's economy and indeed its defense. So China has, for the most part, been benevolent, but there has always been this Damocles sword hanging over the heads of countries that depend on these rare earths that are mined somewhere and then mostly processed in China. Because what would happen if China were to say, well, we will suspend deliveries of rare earths?
Now, in this new world of tit for tat trade tariffs, how long before these latest Chinese restrictions on rare earth exports, how long before they bite?
So what China has just announced is that it will suspend exports of certain rare earths to the United States. And we will see how quickly the US economy buckles under this suspension, because it's you can survive a bit of production with the rare earths you had already imported, but we will certainly hear from US companies that are feeling the pain. Now, we should remember that it's not just a matter of sending the rare earths to America or not. The global supply chains work are much more complicated than that. So it could be that US consumer products using Chinese rare earths are actually assembled somewhere else. So in that sense, it may not bite very quickly. But the point is, China is demonstrating that it can limit the supply of rare earths. Nothing the United States or anybody can do about it, because they don't have that the processing themselves, even though there have been efforts in recent months to increase processing and mining in other countries.
Okay.
It's not going to replace the processing that is happening in China anytime soon.
And so now your article calls for the US to do more to recover these materials from recycled mobile phones and dead technologies, which I thought we were already doing.
It is incredible, is it not, that we recycle all kinds of things already? We recycle recycle paper and plastic and so forth, but we don't recycle a lot of rare earths, simply because it's very difficult to recycle them, because they exist in such small quantities in our gadgets, just as they do in the rock. And until now has just been way more convenient to keep importing from China, where the processing happens and we don't have to look very closely. And there hasn't been much money invested in recycling the rares that do exist in our gadgets, but we do need to recycle those rares, not just to become to reduce dependence on China, but also to become better stewards of the resources on this planet.
Understood. Thank you for talking us through that so clearly. Elisabeth Braw from the Atlantic Council. Have a good day.